This SlideShare presentation with audio is part 2 of Photography in Flux, recorded during the Professional Development Seminar at the 2011 SNAG conference. This segment features the PowerPoint and commentary by Suzanne Ramljak, editor of Metalsmith Magazine, and Marthe Levan, editor of Lark Books.
It is my privilege to introduce Suzanne Ramljak. Suzanne is an art historian, curator, editor, and writer. And as we all know, she's the editor of Metalsmith Magazine. She has also worked in the past at the American Federation of Arts as a curator, where she still works part-time. She has written numerous books and articles. Her experience and background is very important to her credibility here today. Suzanne has lots of opinions. Last year at the pin swap, in exchange for one of my pins, she offered me an opinion. Today, we're looking forward to hearing what Suzanne has to say about photography. Please welcome Suzanne Ramljak.
Thank you, Harriet, and good morning, everyone. Yes, that's all I have is to offer you as my opinion. Well, in my brief time frame, I'm going to offer you 3 quick perspectives on photography. And borrowing from film terminology, I'm going to provide an establishing shot, give you a broad context for the subject. Then I'll move in for the mid-shot and offer some thoughts on still life photography, and then end with a close-up or a focus on Metalsmith's approach to photography. And since you need a visual, you're looking at Stanley Kubrick's Eyes Wide Shut, establishing, mid, and close-up. Starting with the establishing shot. Any discussion of images, photographic or painted, advertising or art, must acknowledge the backdrop of our media-saturated culture. Every image sent out into the world, especially on the newsstand, which is my primary concern, is in dire competition with thousands of other images clamoring for our attention. We live in a visually polluted climate, dense with optical smog. Most of this imagery is in the form of advertising. It's been estimated that we see as many as 5,000 ads every day. And marketers are finding more ingenious or insane ways of capturing our attention, posting ads on, as you see here, supermarket eggs. I mean, this was news to me. On subway turnstiles, which you've probably seen, in doctors' offices and examining rooms, and then, in taxi cabs that are emitting television programs and broadcasting various advertisements as well. So we move in a brave new visual world with predatory picture mongers and image industries flooding the world with photos and images. So it's within, now we go to our still life photography comments. So it's within this frenetic visual environment that we insert our photos of objects. And you're looking at work by 2 iconic still life photographers, Irving Penn on your left and Robert Mapplethorpe on your right. Still life is the depiction of inanimate subject matter. And since the subject is motionless and usually small, the photographer has more control of the design elements like composition, lighting, and setting. And it's rightly been said that a still life photographer makes the photo as opposed to other photographers that take the photo. Backdrop or setting, as we've been hearing and as we'll be discussing further, is a key compositional feature in still life and ideally enhances the object's character rather than overpowering or distracting from it. And when photographing art, not just still life, the challenge is to create a captivating image, one that will compete with all the visual noise out there, but without sacrificing the integrity of the object. So there's a certain tension there. And in this way, art photography, I would say, is very similar to museum architecture. Both involve a creative medium that contains another art form. And the struggle between architectural design and the showcased art is found, in a lot of museums, actually, but the most noteworthy is the Guggenheim, Frank Lloyd writes, where the strong sculptural form often detract from our attention to the works inside. But ultimately, both museum architecture and photography backdrops or settings, in both cases, there is no neutral space. Every decision, every element has implications. And this brings us to Metalsmith Magazine and the decisions and the implications that we've made with the publication. And what you're looking at here is 25 years of covers of Metalsmith, the fall issue, and it kind of shows you, it's a nice synopsis of changing styles of photography and work over the period of 25 years, so that just takes you up till about 5 years ago. Now, surprising as it may seem to you, we do not have a photography budget for Metalsmith. There's no line item for photography. So, unlike most magazines, we do not commission photography, we do not pay for photography. We entirely rely on submissions from artists, from galleries, from museums, and from oftentimes the authors who are out like doing a story, and they'll take shots for us. Now, the same used to be true of the cover. All these covers you looked at here, we did not art direct or photograph or commission, and this was until a couple years ago. And so a year and a half ago, starting in 2010, we began to actually photograph our covers. And this was driven by a desire to have a stronger presence on the newsstand to ensure a kind of potent image, and rather than just rely on what was submitted, and also to have a unified annual volume, so there would be a look to the year. And within that look, we also wanted variety. So the decisions we were making when we brought on a photographer had to be like that they did have a distinctive style, but that it could vary according to the object as well as to, just to allow for variation. All right, so in terms of how we found the photographer, a couple years ago, the search was spearheaded by Luke Heyman, who's our designer at Pentagram, and he was the art director of other magazines like ID and New York Magazine, among others, and so he spearheaded the search for the still life photographer that we were going to use for the magazine. So the first photographer we engaged in 2010 was Nick Ferrari, and you're seeing his homepage, and then for this year we're using John Bigelow Taylor. And I'll talk about both in a moment in some more detail, but you might wonder, like, okay, so how is it that we could afford? Nobody's talked about costs or anything, and it's really nice that you photographers are encouraging and helping everybody else to take photographs. I thought for sure there would be, anyway, a lot of talk about how you do it as opposed to how they can do it, but that's nice. But no one's talked about cost here. Trust you? Just wait, okay. So, you might wonder about the cost involved, and we are an artist organization, nonprofit, and so forth. And this may shock you, or not, but for an entire year of cover photography, our total budget is $1,000. So you break that into 4 or 5, and so for each cover shoot from these photographers that you will get to know in a moment, they get $200 to $250. And so then again, like you say, well, how is that? Why are they doing this? And the answer is because they're doing it for something other than money, obviously. They're doing it because this is a great opportunity for them. It's a creative opportunity, actually, in the same ways that you get off on your problem solving. This was a motivator for them. And it's a compliment to the field that they actually were engaged by the subject matter. And the same goes for Luke Heyman, actually, in Pentagram. We're not paying, market value for their services, but they loved the subject and they saw it as a way to be artists, And I think oftentimes in doing still life photography, you don't even get to be photographers, so to speak. You don't get to practice your art or your trade. So I think, well, maybe not. I'm just telling you that these guys are both, we're excited. So one of my professional advice tips to you is, maybe try to work with people on occasion that aren't in it for the money, because I'm finding that if they're in it for something else, they sometimes give you more rather than less. Starting with Nick Ferrari. Nick's clients list includes Apple Computers, Clinique, which actually Irving Penn was the photographer for, and various other fashion designers. His commercial work, he creates, for me at least, thrilling still lifes through lighting and animation. His work is elegant, yet striking and bold. For Metalsmith, we went with a clean white background, floating forms, and dynamic shadows. You see, a Mac floating, and you see a Thomas Gentili. We didn't use this particular shot for the cover, but, same kind of treatment. And this is one of the things he does. Now, about those shadows, I just want to set the record straight, because I know you can, fabricate shadows, but there are still cast shadows in the world, and these are 3 shots of another piece for the cover. I think we used the tilted one. And, you've got amber in the center of that brooch, and light is radiating through the amber. So these are not fabricated shadows. I just feel like there's a sort of integrity. So Nick creates real shadows. And here's the proof of it. And because in one of the prep handouts, Harriet wrote fake shadows in giant letters, and that just kind of grated on my nerves. I don't know why. I feel truth to shadows. So these are the 4 covers that Nick did for us. And so, he's a master of the genre. And he can control, as you saw with the limes splashing in the dark water and so forth. He can really control all the elements. And I think he did a good job for us. And he is a terrifically nice guy, which helps. And that was my other professional tip: work with nice people. Now we go on to John Bigelow Taylor. He does a range of photography, including architectural photography, and he's also done the photography for books on Daniel Brush. You're seeing an example of that on the left, and Liz Taylor's Jewels. So he's had a lot of experience with jewelry and with metal. But in looking at John, so we wanted to get, for the second year, for this year, we wanted to get away from the pure white background, and we spent a lot of time thinking about context and the disembodied object and re-embodying the object, and we can talk some more about that. And, we struggled with questions of the model and background and props, and each element had complications. And when we looked at John's personal photography, I found on a lot of photographers' websites, they have a little section called personal, and that's what they do when they do whatever they want. This is what they enjoy, and this is what they share. And this was in his personal photography section, and they're obviously out of focus. They're blurry. They're kind of like hazy, suggestive shots. Obviously, you can do perfectly distinct photography. So we actually played on that idea of taking a suggestive background, and it became more and more suggestive and less distinct. But rather than something specific, which would end up coloring the object, and because it is all about the art object, and we wanted to put the attention there. So what we're ultimately doing is he had a visual library of Persian rugs, Oriental rugs, and each of those backgrounds is a unfocused segment of a real pattern from his Oriental rug collection of photography that we then, played with the focus, played with the color, and played with the cropping, and that's providing us the backdrops that we're using this year. And you're seeing the summer issue that will be out within days for the magazine. All right, so I'm going to pull back to close and say a couple of things about what happens when images go out on the web. However beautifully you compose your images, how much labor you put into your decisions, once things go out on the web, anything can happen to the image, and anything pretty much does. And now Metalsmith is in digital form, and I kind of wonder what will become of it out there in digital land. But we know that reproductions are never perfect. And a recent study, it was quite interesting, looked at famous artworks online, like Botticelli's Birth of Venus, and took fragments from various web reproductions and kind of collaged them back together. And as you can see, it's like this collage of half-truths or misrepresentations, because you get, every color and even the texture. So where does the truth lie here? And so the web poses new challenges for the life of photographic images, obviously, and we can't really control it, and that's the frustrating part. You can control so much. It's like putting your work out into the world. Once it's out there, it's like, good luck. And so in our highly visual culture, though, where we rely more on images than on text, often, it's really a case of viewer beware, because you don't quite know what you're getting in the end. And I can give you more specific advice about, or response about, how Metalsmith, chooses images later, but that's what I have to offer you for now. Thank you.
Thanks, Suzanne. Well, our final wrap-up speaker is Marthe Levan. As an acquisitions and development editor for Lark Jewelry and Beading, our final presenter, Marthe Levan, has edited all the jewelry books in the 500 series. I'm sure we have all spent time poring over those luscious images. They're fantastic books. And she's personally curated 500 wedding rings and Masters Gold. She has also edited, juried, or curated over 40 additional titles, including 21st Century Jewelry, Ring a Day, and Carlos Cadena's Color, Texture, and Casting for Jewelers. Marthe's tenure at Lark has given her a front row seat from which to view the rapidly changing frontier of fine art and craft documentation. It is my great pleasure to give you Marthe Levan.
Thank you, Andy. As an editor, I work most of my days alone and amongst really smart, funny, intelligent people, but who are not into jewelry at all. So coming to SNAG every year is like being with my people. And it is so exciting for me to get out in front of, from behind the computer and to meet and interact with the community face to face. So it's just such a pleasure to be here, and to be participating is even more amazing. My name is Marthe Levan. I'm an acquisitions and development editor for Lark Books, which is a publishing company. It's really nice that you all recognize us for the work that we do. I think a lot of people that don't ever pay attention to who publishes a book, but I really appreciate that you guys notice your publisher. I have been at Lark for 10 years. I've worked on all the 500 books, like Andy said, and I have seen probably more jewelry photography than I could ever add up. It is a wonderful, wonderful job, and I'm very, very fortunate. Just to give you an idea, right now I'm pre-jurying the 500 Rings book, and we received 10,000 images. It's a lot of photography. That's for one book. I do 10 books a year. That's an awful lot of photography to see. I also wanted to tell you, we also take our own pictures for Lark Books. We don't just do gallery books. We also do hands-on how-to books and technique books for all levels of artists. And so we also have a photography studio at my job, and we're involved in styling beauty shots as well as doing hands-on photography with authors. Just a little bit background about us. We are located in Asheville, North Carolina, which is a really, really beautiful place. We're about an hour from the Penland School. It has a really healthy community of creative people, and the crafts community there is really, really strong and growing all the time. Our jewelry team consists of 6 people, and I just wanted to acknowledge them because we do work together all the time. Somebody was asking me today if I could do my work from home, and I'm sure I could, but it wouldn't be nearly as much fun. We collaborate on everything. So this is what I plan to cover in the time I'm allotted, and I hope I can manage it. What I'd like to talk about is the predominant style of jewelry photography that I've noticed in the 10 years I've been with Lark. I want to look back a little bit to see what trends and styles have been established. I want to look at the present and see and let you in on what I'm seeing right now, and then I want to look towards the future to some trends and styles that are coming particularly from not the United States, which may direct what we're doing in the future. I want to talk a little bit about viewing platforms and what on earth a platform is and how that dictates trends. And also I'm going to finish up with some of the lingering issues with photographer, with real examples from the images I've been pre-jurying for 500 Rings. There are a lot of problems still in jewelry photography, and people continue to make the same mistakes over and over again, and we continue to give the same feedback over and over again, so please take notes. And then I want to let you know that you can take what I say kind of with a grain of salt. And you should take all hints, tips, rules. Sometimes everything defies convention. What you think is a fantastic jewelry image will be the absolute reverse of what you're told. These are some of my 3 favorite images that have appeared in books recently. On the left is Beate Klockman. She took her own photograph. In the center is Flieke van der Leest, and the photo is by Ada Hartman. And on the right is Fran Allison, and the photo is by Deborah Smith. Beate's picture, it's hilarious to me. I mean, it looks like her earrings are hung on a coat hanger and outside of her window, but I think that architectural shot says so much about the work itself, and I feel like it really makes an image that's memorable, and it plays with the concept in her images very nicely. And Flieke van der Leest in the center, there's nothing in that picture that's in focus. And still, I mean, there's not, I will give a picture credit and pass it through if it has 1 millimeter in focus. There's nothing in that image in focus, but still, I think it's an extraordinary an image that is really devastating. And when I am looking at images, I am looking at them to make a book. You know, it needs to be dynamic and it needs to be dramatic, and this looks fantastic in a book. On the right, Fran Allison, I think this is such a beautiful picture. She's in, black and white or sepia, duotone, and it's really one of the most distracting images, but I think it says a lot to the work that she's wearing, what the necklace was cut out of, that it gives the life, the vitality of the piece, and it's just an absolutely memorable image, and I can't forget her work because of it. But you can go overboard. And these are editorial images, and I'm an editor, so I'm interested in editorial images. This fashion spread in the New York Times Magazine, this was April 2011, and I was so excited to put this in my presentation because I still can't find the jewelry in these shots. And it was, I think they go way too far, and I get furious. And when it's overstyled to the point of distraction. I can't imagine being the jewelers whose work appears in these photographs. So Harriet gave us a list of very interesting questions, and one of them is, what's your favorite background? And by far and away, hands down, skin, skin, skin. I mean, the body is everything as far as I'm concerned. It is the best surface at all to photograph. It's also, guess what, the hardest surface to photograph. And but I think that model shots are the liveliest images. I think they indicate the scale of the work. I think they indicate the drape of the work, its wearability, but they are challenging to shoot. These are a photo shoot for Joanna Goldberg, and then the top right and the bottom left are shots of Joanna's work by Stuart O'Shields, and the center and right are, center is Makoto Haida by Noah Watanabe, I believe. And then Kathleen, and I'm going to butcher her last name, Carrie Kaburu, and it's her own photograph. Okay, so these are all model shots that have been in 500 books, and I did screen grabs from a new book called 21st Century Jewelry, which is the first decade of the 500 series. The model shots are dynamic and dramatic as content. The images have a wow factor that allow me to sprinkle them. I pair the pictures together for the 500 books, and I lay them out in the order that I want the exhibition to flow. And these pictures kind of give me that wow that breaks up those gradated images, because if I had 420 pages of gradated images back to back to back, I don't think it's going to be a very exciting book. So if you do take good model photography, it really captures the attention of editors. So when I started doing these projects. It's during the 500 series. 95% of the images that we got were on film, and only 5% were digital. And now I would say 99% are digital and 1% are film. And we're not even going to accept film anymore, which is sad because it does make a richer, more dimensional image. But this is American craft photography, loud and clear. That gradated image. I could see a picture of I could see a picture and pretty much tell where the artist lives in sort of a heartbeat. It's very interesting, and it was very, very, very well defined in the 90s and the early 20th century. American style was, this gradated background, very, very carefully lit, everything in focus. And the Europeans were the only ones that shot on white backgrounds, and everything was almost a little bit too harshly lit, a little bit jarring, a little bit too strong of a shadow. And then the Japanese and Koreans had this kind of blue background that was like a steel blue with really dramatic lighting. And it's pretty amazing that we're all kind of growing together from these very diverse styles into kind of more of a global style. Now the difference is not so easy to spot. White backgrounds are widely used in North America. On the left is Jane Dodd, and it's a photo by Haru Shishima. And on the right top is Beba Schutz, photo by Ron Bosco. And left is Amy Tavern, photo by Hank Giroux. And the right is Joanna Goldberg, photo by artist. And this made me think, when I started seeing so many American photographers using white backgrounds, that we were kind of all falling into a global style. But I'm not really quite sure yet, because when I see what's coming in for these new books from Europe, then I see something completely different. And I want to talk for just a minute about Swedish jeweler Hannah Hedman's work. She collaborates with a photographer whose name is Sanna Lindberg, and she makes really compelling editorial images where everything that you think about model photography, she defies the convention. The models are looking you right at the eye. They're identical twins and a wolf, for crying out loud. But I don't think, even with all of this kind of stagecraft, that I don't think that the jewelry loses any significance, and that's just my opinion. But I think from an editorial standpoint, I think it's a really beautiful way to present some images, and she will get in every book she ever applies for, because she has absolutely stunning, engaging images. But then I thought it was just Hannah, and then everything I get from Scandinavia is starting to look like this. I think that they're kind of following each other, and these pictures that I'm going to show, and I don't have the names of the photographers, and I apologize for that. They all come from a newsletter called artforward.dk, and they send me pictures just on a regular basis, maybe like once a week. And they're mostly Scandinavian, and these pictures are interesting to me because they're on, not professional models, and they're mostly natural light, maybe very casual, taken outside, and rumpled clothing. But the work, to me, seems really real. Like, because I see it on there, I could wear it. It's not as precious, and it's not as scary as something so formal. And I think it's a really interesting direction, and I kind of love it, and I think that that's a trend that I'm seeing right now. So next up, I wanted to talk a little bit about images for cross-platforms that you may not even be considered. And I love one of you guys that said, we don't have the answers right now. I think that's fantastic, because there's not one size fits all image choice. So right now, in this world that we're living in, your images, they've always worked for you, but now they're working for you 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, because somebody's looking at the web. And I love the early morning talking about trollers. I'm a troller. I mean, I troll. I look at people's websites. I search images. That's how I get my ideas for books, for blogs, for whatever. So I will go to websites like Futuri and look at new work and exhibition shows and stuff like that. What I wanted to show you about this is, your galleries have websites, and this front page is on the left. I picked Futuri because we're in Seattle. This is all you have to get somebody interested to click through. You have one tiny image and your name, nothing about the work. So that image has to work for you, and it has to work really hard. It has to be a really good employee. So it has to convince the browser to click through. On the right is your individual artist page. I clicked through and grabbed a couple of them, and the top one, is all the pieces with the light background, and the bottom one are the pieces with a dark background. And I think it's important to see how your work shows up best and how to present yourself online. And here are some other galleries, and I'm not sure that when people go to gallery sites, they look at how their images either match or don't match, or what size they're at, or how they're cropped. But I think it's important when you're looking to a gallery or on your own website, which is also very important, that you have a style for your work that can work all over the place. Again, here's a blog roll for Klimpto 2, which is from Barcelona, which is a great resource that I use all the time. On the left, there's some blog images that are snapshot with the summary, and the ones on the left have a white background, and the ones on the right have a black background. And I think that it makes a difference for the reader to grab the reader's attention with so much distraction on the web. And then these are just a couple of photo montages from my blog that I write on Wednesdays for Lark. As soon as I blog something, I will share it on Facebook and all the other social networking sites. And then it gives you an option to choose a picture to put with your link. And I always want to have the most engaging picture. So I pick the one that I think will make most people click through. It's because, there's so much grabbing you. The image needs to grab you as well. Harriet wanted us to talk a little bit about book covers and how your images can be best photographed for book covers. The 500 series, this is our latest one on the left. Out of the 10,000 images that we have for the 500 rings right now, there's probably 12 images that will work for the cover out of all that were submitted. And I just pray that some of them are good. The reason is this. That's a square book. Format is 8 inches by 8 inches. So basically I need a square piece for the cover. And so that eliminates anything too vertical or too horizontal. And not only do I need a square piece for the cover, but I need room for type, which when you're photographing an image and you give me tiny little margins of background, I have no room for type. Now I can expand the background at my printer in Hong Kong, but it costs money. And if I can find an image that I don't have to spend money on, that's excellent cover image, I'm not going to spend the money to extend the background on that image. So if you're interested in being on the cover of a 500 book, provide a square kind of format image. No, this is serious stuff you can think about. You got to know who your audience is, right? I need square shots that have a lot of room for type. And that goes for any cover of a book. On the right, which is the new cover for Vintage Jewelry Design, which is a wonderful book that we just bought in from England. That's a very famous fashion photographer, and I just think it's an awesome cover. And so I just wanted to show it. I have no advice about that whatsoever. On the bottom left is another new buy-in from Spain. This is Carlos Codina's Color, Texture, and Casting for Jewelers. When we're designing the covers for those technique books, the readers want to know what they're going to learn if they buy this book. So generally, it's not a one-picture deal. Usually, we're going to say, look, you're going to learn casting, and you're going to learn sprues, and here are the 3 things you're going to make if you buy this book that you can make. So that's generally, we have multiple image covers for our technique books. And on the right-hand side for project books, we try to attract buyers for our products with as many pictures as possible of projects that are inside. So if you like these 4 rings, just wait until you see the 54 more inside. So our needs are changing. Our style publishing industry is going through lots of changes. People who still buy physical books, we're having to make our products more like objects that are precious. So we're changing up a lot of, we're investing a lot more in bells and whistles and cover design and whatnot to really attract the buyer. The Ring-A-Day book that will be out in September, this book actually has a die cut in the center, so that circle is open around the ring. It opens up on the inside. You can see what the first page looks like. It also has rounded corners, which don't show here, but the book has rounded corners and a rubber finish on it. We're kind of looking at books as objects, more precious as ebooks become more popular. And the 21st century jewelry is a linen cover. It has embossed foil, and it's hardback, at keeping it roughly the same cost. So everything's going into making more precious objects. And like you need to look at your images for scaling them down for gallery websites and websites, I also have to look at my covers for scaling them down for Amazon. You know, so it can't just you can't see them just on the bookstore shelf. You need to see them online because a lot of our purchases come from online. So we might have a great cover, but it may not show up, you know, at that scale. I'm taking this opportunity to discuss some of the ongoing issues, and I'll be brief because I'm sure I've probably gone over time. Skin, hair, and nails. All of these pictures are from entries to 500 rings. Just so you know, cropped them, so I hope everybody remains anonymous. The top left hand, when you were talking about digital photography showing up skin problems, those fingers are disgusting. And when they're printed in a book, they get blown up how big? Huge. Now, you know, I could Photoshop, I could spend the money, it's $500. I could Photoshop them out for you. But guess what? There's 10,000 other rings out there that I could just plug right in there. So I'm not going to do it. You know, if it's the only image, and yes, I'll take it, I'll take it. Very difficult to do model photography. We get a rough skin texture. That's the second picture. The third picture is really, really hairy arm. I know, it's probably bad form to think about that, but I can't print it. I just can't. And that's the honest truth. I'm not going to print it. One on the right is really crappy nail polish. I mean, come on, take your time and at least either take the nail polish off or make it all the way a good manicure. The second line is my unfortunate background line. Things come in printed on, laid on top of sweaters. I don't know who was talking about the pesto on the tablecloth last night, but that was excellent. I love these. The second one is large mulch. The third one, I'm not sure what it is, but it sort of looked like toothbrush bristles, maybe. And the fourth one is just really spotty backdrop. And I know they're expensive, and I know that they're hard to maintain, but this is a drop cloth that's just dirty, dirty, dirty. Yes, I can silhouette your images. Yes, I can do that. It's going to cost me $500 for every one. I'm probably not going to do it if you have an unfortunate background. The third one is really interesting. It's uncommon. These are common color casts. Now, when I see images, strange lighting, you guys could definitely tell better than I because I'm not a photographer, but these things that read backgrounds that should be white, that read gray, yellow, green, and blue, and all of them should be white. I don't know how you fix that. I'm just telling you, it's not pretty. Color balance. It's something that I see often. To give you credit, sometimes it is integral to the concept of the work and to the concept of the piece, and I have to tell my art director, no, that background's supposed to be there. It's supposed to look like rust or something. That's part of the piece, but sometimes it's just unfortunate. Hot spots and blowouts. I see a tendency to see a lot of hot spots and reflections on jewelry and metal that becomes way too bright when it's overlit. And then photographer reflections are one of my favorites when you can actually see the photographer in the work. It's kind of hard to see these because I had to work with what I had. Yeah, that's another thing you should look out for. On the top right is over reflection. I think reflections are really beautiful, but when I can't tell what the piece is, where the piece ends and where the reflection begins, I have a hard time understanding your work, and so it's a bit challenging. And the next one is to fill the frame. I know we talked a lot about leaving room for text, but don't leave this much room for text. I can't see the piece, and I think the reader wants to see the piece as well. Because I'm working on this 500 Rings book right now, there are lots of interesting things that people put rings on. And I feel like this was a Beyonce song or something when I typed that. Again, unless the wax is part of your concept, I'd rather not pay to take it out. And yeah, it's all about money. Rings on trees and rings on black forms and rings on things that they shouldn't be on. So I know it's challenging, but more than all of this is the post-production errors and improprieties. Not everybody can use Photoshop well. And what I see a lot of is really bad cutting out, silhouetting of images, where it makes an absolutely unnatural line, or an unnatural floating shadow, or an unnatural shadow at all. One of the things that I see is doubling an image, where you have a ring and then you have its detail in the same image. I can't crop it out. If I can crop it out, I'm okay with it. If I can't crop it out, it's just not even going to get to the jury. In the middle, I think those are fake diamonds. I'm pretty sure. It's hard to know sometimes with all this CAD and Rhino and like what's real and what's fake. And I have to ask my art directors to go in and really look at those images and tell me what's real and what's fake. And in the bottom right, the artist has their name superimposed over the piece, which, you know, I'm not going to be an ad for you either. Thank you very much for your attention. Thank you.
This concludes our Photography in Flux Part 2 with editors Marthe Levan from Lark Books and Suzanne Ramljak, editor of Metalsmith Magazine. Additional presentations with audio recordings are available. In fact, all 3 hours of program content from the 2011 SNAG Professional Development Seminar and the lunch discussion were recorded. The presentations and audio recordings are divided into 5 segments. Segment 1, Niche Marketing, includes insights from 3 entrepreneurial experts. There is also a niche marketing PDF handout. Segment 2, Digital Images, is a tutorial about digital image file extensions. A 1-page PDF handout provides a handy guide. Segment 3, Photography in Flux Part 1, offers the perspective from 3 professional photographers. The Photography in Flux handout includes links to online digital photography tutorials, photography tips, and guidelines for working with photographers. Segment 4, Photography in Flux Part 2, provides informative comments from 2 print media editors with examples of both great and unacceptable images. Segment 5, there's a lively podcast of the question and answer lunch discussion between speakers and audience participants. Finally, look for the PowerPoint tutorial and companion step-by-step PDF on how to build a better drop shadow. In conclusion, we would like to thank the sponsors of the Professional Development Seminar: the NEA, National Endowment for the Arts; MJSA, Manufacturing Jewelers and Suppliers of America; and of course, SNAG. Use links on this final slide for updates throughout the year and information on future programming.